Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for introducing me, Dr. Karen. I'm very happy to be here presenting part of my preliminary results. And as Karen mentioned, I'm a visiting PhD student from Brazil. And since I arrived here, TTD and Tropilunch have been a very special part of my here. And so this is a very special moment for me. And so today I'm going to talk about the spatial temporal change in sandbars after two large dams, Jirau and Santo Antonio on the Madeira River, which is located in the state of Rondonia, Brazil. Then I will discuss some of the socio-ecological impacts of this. But first, I will give you a brief description context of my dissertation and how this chapter is associated with this. So I am analyzing the cumulative impact of things, and cumulative impact assessment deals with the factors of the projects under review, so in this case the dams, but we also analyze the combination of these factors with other human activities and natural process. And the importance of analyzing cumulative impacts is that they can result from individually minor actions, which together can become significant or more significant over time and space. So we are considering this total effect on specific receptors. And for the Amazon, so there are multiple hydroelectric projects in operation and planets, and some of them are planets in cascade, which means that they are on the same river and the other causing cumulative impacts. So as we observed in this map from Atayda to 2019, there are many dense planets and in operation and cascade and causing cumulative impacts. However, these impacts are overlooked, and especially for, considering the socio-ecological impacts. So in this research, in my dissertation, I want to include the socio-ecological interactions and in cumulative impacts, considering that this is, especially in the Amazon where we have high social biodiversity, it's very important to consider these interactions and the cultural things related to this. So we are analyzing the practice of them and for other activities using multiple methods. And in the state of Rondonia, as in the Amazon, we have 6 cascades of them here on our planet. As you can see here with the letter C and the members of these cascades. So the idea is to contribute to this assessment of cumulative impacts for the state of Rondonia. And then I have 3 objectives. One related to ecological connectivity and the social ecological implications. Another analyzing small dams here in the oh my gosh, it's great. Here in the south of the state of Rondonia, where you can see here C2. But today I'm gonna present the results, the preliminary results about the space-time variation in sandbars on the Madeira River. So the energy demand has increased globally, especially in the last 30 years, and hydropower dams has spread, especially in the Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. And in Brazil in 2020, 62.5% of the energy production was based on hydropower, and especially from large dams in the Amazon. And some of these large dams are constructed in the same river, so in cascade, as we see for the Madeira River, where there are 2 large dams which has a potential over 30 megawatts. And however, despite the presence of many dams and cascades, especially in the Amazon, their cumulative impact are still overlooked by research papers and also in the licensing process in Brazil. So there is a gap in knowledge gap to understand these cumulative impacts. And among the many negative impacts of damming the rivers, we can see changes in water level and quality, seasonal and daily flow, human livelihoods and activities changes, and also alterations in sediment formation and increased erosion. For example, in the case of Lincoln Mekong River Delta in China, they reported the shrinking of sandbars associated with sediment transportation and increased erosion. And they discussed the ecological impacts of these shrinking sandbars. And so, as reported for a study here in the U.S., in the eastern Minnesota, the alterations in sandbars can have implications in the populations of chelonians, especially associated with the nesting areas, and it can also affect the reproductive success of these chelonians. And so sandbars can be good indicators for assessing the cumulative impacts of dams, especially because sandbars are sensitive to changes in water flow, river level, and sediment transportation. Furthermore, the sandbars also have an important socio-ecological role, so affecting biodiversity and riverine livelihoods. And if sandbars are not studied or monitored and mitigation measures are not taken, these negative impacts can become irreversible over time. And however, little is known about the effects of dams on socio-ecological interactions involving sandbars in the Amazon, which is the case of the Madeira River. So just a brief description of the Madeira River for those who didn't know about it. So it's the longest and one of the most important tributaries of the Amazon River, and with an area of around 1.25 million square kilometers. And this is a picture of the Madeira River from the São Carlos riverine community. This is the location, of the in the north of the state of Rondonia here, in the southwest of the Brazilian Amazon forest. And as you can see, the Madeira River has brown color, and it has this name, Madeira, which in Portuguese is wood, or in English is wood. Because during the rainy season, it spreads and carries a lot of logs in the river. This is just a video to show the dimension of this river. So here is in the Cojibin community, and over here the Amazon forest, and it's very beautiful. Guilherme also does his field work there. Okay. Oops. Okay. So sandbars are spread along the Madeira River, and as whitewater rivers, which has a lot of sediments, the riparian areas constantly are remote by flood process. So the location and the extension of the sandbars vary over the years and space. So here's just a picture to show the sandbars on the Madeira River, and here's the floodplains. And this is a picture from the sandbars with the Landsat images. So the spectral profile, when you see from the satellite, is similar to Earth. And on the Madeira River, the sandbars have an important socio-ecological role since the riverine communities and the freshwater fauna depend on the seasonal changes of the Madeira River, that we explain now. So during the rainy season, which from October to April, the river level increases and the river width expands, so carrying many sediments, especially sand, silt, clay, and organic matter to these dry areas. And then during the dry season, when the river level decreases, these areas, so the sandbars and floodplains become very fertile. And during the years, the riverine communities use this fertility to grow crops, especially beans, pumpkins, and watermelon. And besides agriculture, the sandbars are also used for egg harvesting, leisure, and also associated with agriculture, they have some cultural activities such as the watermelon festival in the Madeira River community. So after harvesting these watermelons, they do a big festival in their communities. And sandbar also have other ecological role such as habitat for aquifers, nesting areas for colonials, as I mentioned, and the stability of river channels and ecosystems. Um, However, the impacts of these two large dams on sandbars are unknown. This is just a picture to show how big it is, the Santo Antonio Dam. So they have 44 turbines in the Madeira River. And the goal of this chapter is to analyze the spatial-temporal changes in sandbars in the Madeira River after the construction of Jirau and Santo Antonio dams. And the focus of this analysis is understanding how variation and sandbars might affect the Madeira River's socio-ecological system. So as I mentioned, considering these interactions between social and biophysical systems. So this is our study area, and we have three stretches. So upstream both dams, with the influence of the reservoir of Jirau Dam. The other stretch is downstream both dams. So there's the influence of the operation of Jirau and Santo Antonio dams. And here in the middle, the stretch between Jirau and Santo Antonio, with the influence of the reservoir of Santo Antonio and the operation of Jirau dam. And for the temporal change, we consider three periods, so pre-dams, post-dams, so after the operation of Santo Antonio Dam. And we also considered a third one, the construction from 2008 to 2011, because they have, during the construction, they have specific characteristics related to the water and sediments intersection. And so we use it remote sensing data from Landsat 5 and 8 collected from Google Earth Engine. And after we did supervised classification using semi-automatic classification plugin at QGIS using minimal distance method. And to analyze the river level change, we collect the data in the HydroLab, which is a system from the National Water Agency from Brazil. And in this research, we use two-item approach. So we conducted 23 semi-structure interviews in Portuguese last year during the dry season. And we validated the questionnaire with researchers from the Federal University of Rondonia, because these researchers have a lot of experience in these communities and they know a lot of the activities, so it was a very important step. And we obtained the consent form from each participant, and we had a a great support from field assistants, which were people who most of them were born in these communities and they raised there, so they knew many people, the activities. So they were very important in this part of the research. So we had an opportunistic and snowball simply because we also asked the interviews to give us other suggestions of people. So in general, our respondents were adult riverine people who have been worked with sandbar and floodplain agriculture for many years. Most of them were men from 30 to 76 years, and the interviews last from 40 to 60 minutes. So now some of the results. So when we compared the strats, the lowest variation was for the upstream part, and the highest variation for the downstream stretch. And the between had the intermediate variation. When we compare the temporal change, so the pre-dams, as we can see here, so before having the dams constructed there was a natural variation on sandbars area over the years. But after the dams, we observe a reduction of sandbars, even when we remove some of the outliers related to some floods in the Madeira River. So we observed this reduction with a significant variation between pre and post dams. And then when we compare this between each stretch and each period, the construction stretch had the most variation as observed here in this slide. And especially for the upstream and between the stretches. And these changes were associated with the deviation drainage of the river during this period. And we also analyzed the attendance of these sandbars over the years. So here in the letter D, we removed the construction part because we observed this high variation and also the floods. So there was a flood in 2014 and 1997. So we removed this variation to see the influence of the dams, and then it's reducing over the years. So now I'm gonna talk a little bit more about each stretch and the variation and how we're analyzing these results. So for the upstream of dams, we saw variation here during the construction, but comparing pre and post dams periods, this variation was not significant. That means that the sandbars maintained a similar variation after the dams, and we associated this result with the fact that here upstream there's no other dam upstream Jirau dam, so there's a dispersed effect of the Jirau dam reservoir, and then you don't need a high level of the river, so a big change in this area. However, and when we see the stretch between the dams, so here, with the influence of the reservoir of Santo Antonio Dam and the operation of Jirau, we noticed that there was almost a disappearance of the sandbars here on the stretch post dams. So we also observed a significant difference, so pre and post dams. And then when we analyze this result with the information of river level, so here in the line red, we observe, so after the dance, this increase in the river level, which is affecting the exposed sandbars, and these can result in loss of nesting areas for turtles and ecological relations for fish, and also loss of agriculture areas. And when we analyze the data for downstream river level, this change was much slower than the stretch between the dams. So what does this result for the stretch between dams can mean for us in terms of the cumulative impact assessment? So the greater the number of the dams, the greater the chance that ecosystems between dams will be affected cumulatively. And although, so these dams, Jirau and Santo Antonio, they have run off the river dams, so they have this boat type turbines, which this technology was developed to reduce the size of the reservoir. But even though they have reservoirs there, and as we observe it here, it's affecting the socio-ecological system than the stretch between this. And some of the recommendations associated with this cumulative impacts are establishing a greater distance between the dams. So this effect of the river level can be more dispersed, as I explained it for the stretch upstream the dams. And it's also very important when conducting a cumulative impact assessment to consider the socio-ecological characteristics of the region. For example, here, this wasn't included in the impact assessment, so also the mitigation measures were not taken. And now about the last stretch downstream, here with the influence of the creation of Jirau and Santo Antonio dams, we saw high variation related to the effects of mega flood in 2014 in our results, and also the respondents also mentioned a lot about this event. And we saw a significant variation between pre and post dams. And as I showed on the previous slides, there's a tendency of reducing this sandbars, but it's not related, as in the case of the stretch between dams, with the river level. So we were thinking about some hypotheses about the factors influencing this reduction of sandbars downstream. And the first one is the reduced sediment transportation due to this fragmentation caused by the dams. And some studies have shown this variation. The second hypothesis is that sandbars are spreading under the surface water downstream after these dams. So as we analyze the exposed sandbars available for biodiversity and people, it can be that the sediments due to this kind of turbines are coming, but as the river flow is reducing, they are staying under the water. And this represents a concern for shipping safety, especially because Madeira River is a very important river for trading cargo and people between three states, so Amazonas, Rondonia, and Mato Grosso do Sul. So the implications of these results can be a lack of habitats for reptiles and nesting areas for turtles. It can also represent threat for the life cycle of these groups. But it's not possible to know whether the absence of nesting areas in these two threats, so between and downstream, is affecting the population of colonials. So this is a suggestion of future studies. So analyzing the population ecology of this, especially associated the timing of this exposure of sandbars and the turtle nesting time. And as recommended by Linhard, we have studied this practice of this in nesting areas for turtles in the U.S. Monitoring this nest is also very important to film the nesting success. And our respondents from the interviews also mentioned about the influence of hydropickings. So hydropickings are a natural release of water for peak energy production. So when the central system for electric production sends a message for these stems, they release a large amount of water to produce more energy, and this affects the river level, which increases suddenly. And this was also reported by a study conducted by Almeida et al. 2020, where they observed this influence of hydropickings downstream, especially 5 kilometers down the Santo Antonio Dam. This is just a video showing like the gate when it's closed very loud. And when it's open, so there's this really and so with this river levels, the sudden river level, many families have lost their crops and also some boats. But as we were working with this, studying this agriculture, this is what we are describing, and this have affected their traditional schedule for agriculture because now they don't know exactly when to plant and when to harvest. So it's also a loss of time and their investments of resources. So many families have this fear of losing most of these crops again, and these have resulted in the reduction of crop production. And one of the leaders, the riverine community in Pujabindio, we reported that it has been very common in the last few years to stop like this sandbar or floodplain agriculture. And during the interviews, we also asked if there was a mitigation measure to deal with this hydropickings, and no one mentioned a mitigation measure directly related to this. They mentioned about this compensation measure, building cooperatives for processing fruits, but it's not something related to hydropickings. And as Almeida et al. 2020, we also propose that actions to avoid or reduce the effects of hydropickings need to be taken. For example, warning systems about when they are releasing this water. But it's very important to hear on the communities and what they want and what they need in these cases. And the interviews also were important to understand other factors affecting the floodplain and sandbar agriculture, such as gold mining. So riverine communities reported that the activity is shrinking sandbars on the Madeira River and also competing with labor because some people are abandoned on the agriculture, this traditional activity to go to gold mining. So this is also influencing the reduction of crops. And the other factors were about infrastructure because they need to be like end over for a long period. So as people are getting older, it becomes harder. And the other point influencing these crops is the generations. the generation. So some young people do not want to continue this traditional activity. So some of the conclusions of this chapter is that the most effective stretches were between the dams and also downstream. So between was related to the reservoir of Santo Antonio Dam, and downstream related probably with the sediment transportation. And the impacts are especially for agriculture, leisure, and the life cycle of the towns and communities. And for impact assessment, so analyzing these cascade effects can contribute to the proposal of methods analyzing these cumulative impacts, especially because, as reported for Zal, there are many areas such as the Southeast Asia and South America already have many dense planets. So considering different factors affecting this is very important for impact assessment. And also this approach, considering socio-ecological interactions, is important to reduce emissions of local socio-ecological impacts. And we also highlight the importance of the interviews, so to include the perceptions and needs of the riverine communities, not only an impact assessment, but also for the mitigation measures for adaptive management of these impacts. So this work wouldn't be possible with the support of many people, and I would like to acknowledge all the riverine people along the Madeira River. We have supported us directly, and special thanks for the fieldwork assistants, especially Zaya, Igor, Edgar Francisco, Mateus, and also the teachers from the schools, and all the researchers from Brazil, from SPAC-HIMPI. Here, a special thank you for Dr. Ron, because I have learned a lot of her during my stay here. My lab mates, my committee in Brazil, especially my advisor, Dr. Loreto, and all the grants received for this research and the partnership. Thank you very much.